So wonderful to see all of your faces this morning. Thank you so much for joining us for the February Let's Talk Business. We're super excited for how 2021 has started. Although January felt quite long, with a couple months in and of itself. I don't know if anybody else felt that way. But we're excited to see all of you this morning, and we're super excited to have an incredible moderator from our Regional Economic Development Group with us this morning, Alisa Crider. She's helping us with this conversation, so that way you get a break from our staff, but also get to dive in deep with Brian and Robert. So as a couple of housekeeping reminders, please make sure you keep yourself on mute. If you would like to be on camera, you do have that ability, but obviously no pressure since it's 10 a.m. on a Friday and it's a little dreary outside. But we'd love to see your smiling face. So thank you all for joining us. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. Alisa will be taking some of those throughout, and we definitely want to make this an interactive conversation. So with all of that said, I am going to turn it over to Miss Alisa Crider. She's the Director of Investor Relations over at Hampton Roads Alliance. She's a wonderful partner of ours, and we're excited to have her. So Alisa, good morning. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Jessica. I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to moderate, and good morning to you all. I see a lot of familiar faces, and for those that I haven't met yet, nice to meet you. Looking forward to this. So yes, like Jessica mentioned, I'm Director of Investor Relations at the Hampton Roads Alliance. If you're not familiar with the Hampton Roads Alliance, or the Alliance as we call ourselves, we're the leading regional economic development organization in the region, and we work very collaboratively with our partners to attract, grow, and retain higher wage industries and talent in the region. Now, our big focus areas are business attraction, business expansion, and business intelligence, but none of this would be possible without our partners. And so we're proud to represent 11 localities, including the great city of Portsmouth, and we have the support of nearly 70 private investors. So that's a little bit more about the Alliance. Shameless plug, I'm sending you guys a copy of our annual report, but you are not to look at this now. Just save it on your computer so you can review it maybe after this meeting. But with that, I'm looking forward to getting started. And so I'm going to start with some prepared questions, but definitely want to hear your questions. So please, at any point, feel free to put your questions in the chat, and we'd love to answer those for you. So let's just start off thinking back to 2020. Like Jessica said, a really tough year for all of us. But if I could kind of point this question, both Robert and Brian, to chime in, you know, what were some of the wins of 2020? Let's start with a real positive question.
Okay. Well, first, let me say, and I'll start off. Let me say welcome to everyone this morning for being on this chat. We appreciate you taking time out on a Friday to sit and talk with us. And Alisa, to you, really appreciate you and everything that you do from a regional standpoint, but also being here this morning. From a 2020 win standpoint, you know, we have some good things happening in Portsmouth. You know, two that come to mind right off the bat, certainly the Rivers Casino Portsmouth project, as well as the entertainment district. That was a great win for us. That passed overwhelmingly in the referendum, and we're moving forward on that. And then certainly projects like Fairlead and their investment on the waterfront were all great projects for us this year. But switching gears a little bit, I would also say two great wins that we had in our office specifically was the addition of two of our newest staff members, Ms. Pamela Kroom and Ms. Jenny Osborne. You know, they came in the latter part of the year, but have hit the ground running. So we're really excited about what they bring to the table. So, you know, from a standpoint of overall, great things happening in Portsmouth.
So glad to hear that. Brian, what do you think?
Good morning, everybody. 2020 was a challenging year, but we've actually had quite a bit of activity that has happened and a lot of investment that came to fruition in 2020 in Portsmouth. Certainly the projects Robert had mentioned are quite large and significant, very visible projects. We've had a lot of activity, though, on the smaller side throughout Portsmouth. A lot of retail activity has come to the city, and really all throughout the city, where you'll see a lot of new restaurants and retailers opening up throughout Portsmouth. So whether it's a Wawa, multiple Starbucks coming to town, Chipotle, Zaxby's, some new to market restaurants, retailers. There's a lot of activity that has happened starting in 2020. A couple of other projects I did want to mention that are noteworthy. The Hampton Roads Community Health Center, which is under construction here soon on the 1500 block of High Street, will be breaking ground. That's a pretty significant project because it does provide critical healthcare services to the Hampton Roads community. And it is located within our new innovation district, which is essentially the what we like to call kind of downtown west as you move along High Street outside of the downtown area. So really at the heart of our innovation district, which will be a hub for healthcare, medical, and technology businesses. Very excited about that. That's a 20,000 square foot development and a 10 million plus investment in Portsmouth. One other project that was, I think, kind of a spinoff from the effects of COVID and the growing e-commerce industry is a company that is relocating to Portsmouth, has actually opened its doors, Blue Ridge Product Solutions, in the Port Norfolk community. They have acquired a warehouse, 100,000 square foot warehouse, and will be operating a new e-commerce business right here in Portsmouth. So very exciting that that has come to town as well. So those are just a couple more large wins for us in 2020.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad to hear about all of those. I wonder, could you tell us a little bit more? The casino, it passed with flying colors in November. So what can we anticipate on the project this year?
So, there's kind of two tracks that are going along with this project. And to kind of refresh everyone's, memory, this project is a $300 million project that will ultimately generate about $16.3 million for the city from a tax generation standpoint. To put that in perspective, that $16.3 million adds 7% to the city's GDP. And the job creation that comes from this, over 1,200, really about 1,300 jobs, permanent jobs, 1,400 construction jobs. You're looking at, again, another 5% added to our job number. So we're really excited about this project. And again, we're running two parallel tracks, if you will. So we have the legislative side, which is going to be the licensing portion, and I'm proud to announce that on Tuesday at the Virginia Lottery Board's meeting, they did approve the emergency casino regulations. And why that's important is because those regulations set the tone for what will be in the application for the actual license. We anticipate those. They are on a track right now to be approved, final approval April the 7th. By the Attorney General and his team and the executive branch there. And with that, we're hoping very soon after our partners can move forward with their license application. But then on the other side, we're working it from the development side, making sure that all the permits will be in place and that they will be ready to go once they obtain that license. Why that's important is because within about 24 months from the time they obtain that license, this casino should be up and running. The entertainment district should be up and running. And so that eventually or essentially can put us at 2022, 2023 with having this casino open. So we're excited about that. We're going to have some great announcements later on this morning with regards to the casino. But they've got a great team that's been put together over at Rush Street. Ms. Delcino Miles and the Miles Agency has been listed as enlisted, if you will, as the community engagement folks. So you're going to see a lot of them out and about in the community throughout Portsmouth in the coming months.
Well, if Delcino's assisting, you're in great hands. This is wonderful news. Thank you so much, Robert, for that awesome update. Glad to hear it. Let's shift gears just a smidge. For those that may not be as familiar what all you guys work on a day-to-day basis, tell us a little bit about like the numbers and metrics and what all your team monitors.
Okay. So to kind of, again, put it in perspective, we look at a calendar year when we talk about our new investment into the city. And though that number is made up of essentially three things. First, what the office directly handles from a project standpoint. So that's all new projects that we work and land here in Portsmouth. The second item that we look at are the building permits that are associated with project expansions, relocations, things of that nature. And then third, the final thing we look at would be the associated land sales when it comes to commercial properties. We don't really look at the residential aspect of that, but more of, again, the commercial land sales. When you take those three numbers together, that's what gives us our annual number. And this team has done a great job at bolstering and boosting that number every single year. 2017, we had $44 million was new investment for the year. That's a lot for Portsmouth, but not a lot when you talk about regionally. So we had to change some things. We added some folks. We added Mr. Donahue and Mr. Armand Smith to the team back in 2018. In 2018, we jumped to $104 million. We added Ms. Jessica Biedenbaugh, and we jumped to $379 million, in 2019. And I'm proud to announce that for 2020, we had another record year of $435 million of new investment into the city. Again, just from a perspective standpoint, for when we talk about that number of just projects, what we work project-wise, again, 2019, we had total $379 million new investment. In 2020, we landed $392 million of straight economic development projects. So that kind of goes to show what this team can do when we really put our mind to it and focus on Portsmouth. And we're looking at attraction, we're looking at expansion, retention. We had companies like Fairlead, as I spoke about before, investing almost $30 million in our waterfront. But that's like their third expansion over the last several years in the city of Portsmouth. So you now see their shipbuilding and ship repair component down on the waterfront. Very excited about that. Land sales continue to be strong. But again, the team has really put in a committed effort into making sure that we attract and retain the right businesses here in Portsmouth.
Fantastic. We've talked about so much of the good stuff, and I wish we could just only talk about that. But I think, we got to also talk about it was a tough year. And so what trends did you see for businesses in 2020?
So, one trend that I see that I think is going to continue for the immediate future is going to be what we're doing right here. And that's meeting virtually. I think we've realized and had to pivot on how we do economic development. And I think businesses now realize that you can still meet the demand virtually if necessary. Not just meeting virtually, but also working virtually. So you're going to see people continue to work from home. You're going to see people, but I think that opens up opportunities because you could work from home, but work for a company that's in Oregon, for example. You could work from home and have that time where you can balance that work life that we so dearly need right now. I think the other trend that you're going to see is e-commerce is really going to continue to grow. And that's not taking away anything from the brick and mortar. But I think companies are really going to have to start looking at and focusing on that e-commerce part of their business and the virtual aspect of can they get things done without being in front of someone? Can you still land that contract that's based on customer service without having that service be directly in front of someone? Also, simple things that we used to do like shaking people's hands, that's over with. So the personal contact, we're going to have to find a way to be personal virtually or at least 6 to 8 feet apart.
Think you nailed it. Yeah, elbow tap, that's one of my personal favorites. But I think the handshake is gone. But we're all getting accustomed to this virtual life and doing a great job. And look how advanced we're getting in technology. So there's definitely some positives. Brian, back to you, a two-part question. First, what are you most proud of, from 2020? And then a month into this year, 2021, what can we expect from Portsmouth?
Well, great questions. There's so many things I think that we were proud of with respect to last year. but I'll just choose a couple and share those with you. I think first and foremost, the resiliency of our business community and its response to COVID-19. The fact that businesses really at a moment's notice had to pivot and transition their business models to adapt to a totally new environment that nobody had really experienced before. So whether you're your restaurants transitioning to provide outdoor dining and expanded takeout, retailers developing more of an online platform for their customers, ordering curbside pickup, those things that really had to happen within just weeks of COVID hitting us all, was pretty amazing that businesses were able to do that and have continued to do that and evolve. So I think first and foremost, that would be one thing that I was really proud to see. And it's continuing. So they're continuing to, evolve and learn how to deal with the new environment. The other thing, Alisa, I think that was exceptional was the fact that we had an opportunity to serve our small business community here in Portsmouth through a grant program that was funded by our City Council and EDA, which was our COVID-19 Business Recovery Grant. The City Council allocated $1 million to the program, and we were able to assist 100 businesses here in Portsmouth with financial support, which took a lot of work. I really have to credit our staff. Everybody pitched in to process those applications over a 3-month period, and we actually provided close to that full $1 million amount to our businesses, and 90% of those had fewer than 30 employees, and of that, the majority had less than 5. So really a lot of micro businesses were able to be assisted. So I think that between those two things, the fact that we could help our business community kind of deal with some of the challenges that we experienced last year, we were pleased to be able to do that. So 21, wow. So much to look forward to, right? So what can we expect here in Portsmouth? I think to sum it up, activity. We've got a ton of activity happening right now in Portsmouth, and that's citywide. And I can tell you, I've been in Portsmouth now for 13 years. I've never seen this much economic development activity happening at one time. So whether you're downtown, in the Midtown area, Craddock, Victory Boulevard, Churchland, you name it, there's development happening, and development of all types. So whether it's industrial growth that we're having right now through facilities like the Lineage cold storage warehouse in West Norfolk, a 200,000 square foot facility, state of the art, providing 60 jobs and $60 million in investment. That's a big deal. We've got retail, I think we mentioned earlier, happening all throughout Portsmouth. New retailers coming to the city, new single family housing. Robert mentioned we don't really track that as an economic development metric, but there's a lot of infill housing happening in Portsmouth, market rate, from builders such as Ryan Homes, who've come to Portsmouth and invested substantially. And then lastly, multifamily projects. We've got a number of multifamily projects underway. You'll see going up as we speak on Effingham Street. We have a 50-unit building that's underway right now by the Woda Cooper Company. Really a beautiful building that will be coming to downtown. So I think to sum it up again, activity. There's a lot of it. Keep an eye out. There's going to be more coming. So great questions. Thanks.
Good. Hey, go ahead.
I apologize. I wanted to piggyback off what Brian was just saying. Something that I'm very, most proud of from 2020 is really this team. Brian and Ms. Kroom and Ms. Osborne and Ms. Biedenbaugh and even Mr. Smith when he was here, who has now moved on. If you don't know, Mr. Armand Smith has moved on to work for VEDP and work for the state. I think he might be watching us here today. He's probably supposed to be working, but he's probably watching us. But I will tell you that, this is the best economic development team, and you will continue to hear me say that, in the region. We couldn't get done the things that we do without this team and the effort they put in, and the resiliency that they have. Again, the grants that we gave out to small businesses totaling $957,000, that was all them. It was all them working diligently to get this money out in 3 months. That's a great feat. But at the same time, the resiliency of our businesses, as Donahue stated, was phenomenal. I mean, we had businesses that responded to COVID. I see Mr. Spinazzola on this call this morning, Metropolitan Solutions, and what they did from a standpoint of sanitizing PPP or PPE, and businesses like Mercy Chefs, and those folks, making sure that our children stayed fed and that our frontline workers stayed fed. Those folks really stepped up, and a number of businesses on this call did their part in responding to COVID. So very proud of that. In 2021, we see a lot more of that happening and a lot more of that coming together.
Wonderful, thank you. What are some of the big initiatives your team's working on this year? You touched on so much good news, but any other big initiatives the group should know about?
So, we're going to continue to focus on making sure, as Mr. Donahue stated, activity. But we've got to make sure that we're focusing on these emerging industries. You're going to see a lot about Portsmouth and Portsmouth economic development when it comes to offshore wind. That's going to be a big thing for us. We have our partners at the port. I see Chris Gullickson on the call this morning, but our partners at the port, we see Portsmouth Marine Terminal as being a key, as a hub for offshore wind in the coming year. We really see a focus again on that being a destination when it comes to tourism and the casino and the entertainment district. But I think we're really going to be focused on workforce development. When we talk about having to pivot and change how and what we do, we still do the traditional or old school, if I want to call it that, economic development, where we land a company, make that announcement, create the jobs. But in Portsmouth, what you're going to see initiative-wise is we're going to keep pushing forward, and we're going to add a step to that, and we're going to fill those jobs. So one thing that I'd like to announce this morning is today we will be launching our Portsmouth at Work initiative. And that's our workforce development initiative, focusing on making sure that when jobs are created in the region, in Portsmouth specifically, that our citizens are ready and prepared for those jobs. We want to make sure we're touching those communities that are underserved. We want to make sure we're touching those individuals that are underemployed, unemployed, because what we're seeing when we talk about that trend question, there are a lot of people out of work, but there are a lot of opportunities for individuals to fill these jobs that we're creating, whether it's at the entertainment district, whether it's at Fairlead, whether it's at all these places that they're growing. So we really are excited about this venture into workforce development. Has not been done in Portsmouth. I think we've had folks doing it independently for a while, but this is a way for us to bring all of that together. And with the help of our Economic Development Authority, I see a couple of our members, the chair, Mr. Ray Smith, is on. I see one of the commissioners, Ms. Sandra Smith, is on as well. Thank you to them for helping us make this possible. We have 3 or 4 programs launching virtually today that will allow free programs that will allow individuals to gain training for things like working from home and receiving a certificate for being able to work from home, being a nurse's aide. We know how important healthcare is going to be, both mental and physical healthcare, to make sure our individuals get what they need as we go through this pandemic crisis, and a couple others. So that's going to be a big initiative for us. Certainly the Innovation District. That's going to be very important for, as Mr. Donahue stated, downtown west, if you will. And that's pretty much an area between Effingham Street all the way to the MLK connector. We're going to have some additional parcels put in there, kind of stretching down a little bit more towards downtown. But that innovation district is going to be key. I know folks are asking about, things from, a campus, kind of a maker space, even electric vehicles, and the desire to have move into the future and have charging stations for electric vehicles. All of those things we see are key to making that innovation district a success. And we're already building there. Again, Hampton Roads Community Health Center is being built smack dab in the middle. So from that biomed, if you will, type of focus, we're going to have some new housing, upscale housing in the innovation district. So those are some of the initiatives that we're going to focus on, but we want to make sure, again, primarily that when jobs are created in the region, whether it's by us, whether it's by our neighbors in Norfolk, Chesapeake, Virginia Beach, and even with the Alliance, that we have folks that can fill those jobs immediately.
Robert, thank you for everything your team's doing for workforce development. That's refreshing to hear. That's wonderful news. And you actually already addressed one of the questions we had in the chat. Andrew was curious about, the electric vehicle charging infrastructure, because we've seen some of it, in Norfolk. And so that's wonderful to hear Portsmouth will be getting some as well, because that's important. More and more people I'm hearing are getting Teslas, and I'm quite jealous. Let's see, we're going to wrap up our questions pretty soon, so please continue, everyone, to put your questions that you have in the chat, and we'll definitely have time to address those. But tell me, Brian, how can Portsmouth businesses be more involved?
Absolutely, and we hope that everybody will be more involved, and I think this is how you can do it. Directly engaging with our office, with Portsmouth Economic Development. That's your first step. So working to develop a relationship with our office and our team, reaching out and making contact. This event is all about making connections and building relationships. So that's your first step. I think also engaging with the City Council, our Economic Development Authority, our Portsmouth Port and Industrial Commission, to voice your support for economic development in the city of Portsmouth, and to have your voice heard, I think, is important as well. And then lastly, I would probably say, participating with the many organizations that exist in Hampton Roads. So whether it's the Hampton Roads Alliance, that's a plug for you, Alisa, or others like the Hampton Roads Chamber, Portsmouth Partnership, you name it. I don't want to leave anybody out here. Even, Old Town Business Association. Get involved, become a member, participate in their events. I think that's really critical to growing your network and supporting your fellow businesses. But I think, as Robert always says, it all comes down to relationships, building, developing, growing those. And I think that's how you can be more involved and really support economic development.
Fantastic. I think you nailed it. Let's jump to a couple of questions in the chat. And again, I encourage any other folks that have questions, go ahead and type them in. Perfect timing. Hello, Susan, dear friend Susan Long-Molnar. She says, what has been done to support less use of commercial space due to remote new way to work to help commercial real estate building owners?
Yeah, I'll tackle that one. You can imagine, when people need less space, and we've seen it, companies are quote unquote downsizing because folks are working from home. We've got to find creative ways to utilize that space. You see companies like Amazon, e-retailers and e-commerce folks like Amazon, Wayfair, places like that, that'll take a commercial building and turn it into, leave it a commercial look, but it ultimately be some type of distribution and supply space. We've got to make sure that our ordinances and our permitting allows for creative reuse of these buildings. I think we've done that. I think we've made the ordinance a little bit more flexible so that we can adapt, because that's going to be the big thing is adapting going forward. We've got to be able to, you've heard the word pivot used a lot this morning. We've got to be able to pivot and meet the needs of our businesses. And one of the ways we do that is, again, being flexible as possible. But again, to answer that question, we're going to have to be creative. with that space. And I think you're going to see that going forward here in Portsmouth, whether, again, we turn something into a maker space where we have 3D printers and things of that nature, whether we turn it into, much like our colleagues at the partnership have turned what was an office space into now a creative type of office space in Bloom, in a co-working space. That's going to be the opportunity, and the opportunities we're going to have to jump on.
That's great. I have only heard great things about Bloom, and I'm loving all their social media. I've been following them. That's wonderful. I just have a couple general questions. And again, feel free if there's any other additional questions to put those in the chat. What are common misconceptions people have about Portsmouth, and how can we combat these and communicate more effectively?
I'll respond to that.
Okay.
And I'm just going to, you said misconceptions, but I'm just going to give you one.
Okay.
So I think probably the thing that I hear the most is that there's not economic development activity in Portsmouth at the same levels of, let's say, our neighboring Hampton Roads communities. And I think that's a misconception that we hear quite often. And it's really just simply not true. I think we actually are performing at a proportionate level to our neighbors based on our size and then available land area. Robert had mentioned earlier some of our metrics and our performance numbers. Over the last 4 years, we've had nearly $1 billion in new investment happen in Portsmouth. So there are things happening here. And it hasn't just happened overnight. I mean, there's been a lot of hard work and behind the scenes efforts to kind of set the stage for that to happen. I think now we're beginning to see kind of the fruits of those labors. As you drive through Portsmouth, there's physical activity taking place, but it's taken a while to make it happen. So I think what we need to do to kind of combat this misconception is to share our story, right? And let folks know in Hampton Roads and beyond that Portsmouth is a place where you can invest and be successful. And we're working to do that. So whether it's been through our rebranding efforts that Jessica Biedenbaugh in our office has taken the lead on over the last couple of years and done a complete rebrand, to increase marketing and outreach to the business community, our residents, events like this today, to have these conversations and share information, I think is how we do that. And we need to continue to share the story of all the positive things that are happening in Portsmouth, that we're growing, we're improving, and that there's big things happening and on the horizon. So I think that that is the one thing that I think collectively we can do, really just share the story and share the true story.
Thank you, Brian, for that candid response. And I wholeheartedly agree. And, all the wonderful businesses in Portsmouth can help share that story, and they're all a part of it. And it's wonderful. Robert, what are the most critical changes that we must make to face the future effectively?
Yes, so that's a great question. And I think I'm going to answer that from a standpoint of what, two standpoints. One, what we need to do in this office, and then two, what I think the Portsmouth business community should be prepared to do. From a staff standpoint, there are 3 words that we utilized in 2020 that we utilize when we talk about how we do what we do every day. And that's focus, follow up, and follow through. And anyone that's heard me speak before has heard me say that. For 2021, now we're on the other side of 2020. We've seen what the impact that had. We got to add 2 more words to that. We got to be consistent, and we got to communicate. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to make sure that we are consistent in how we handle things. We're going to make sure, again, we focus on what we need to, we follow up when we need to, follow through on what we're going to say. But when we do all of that, we've got to make sure we communicate that effectively to the broader audience from a staff standpoint. From a business standpoint, I think everyone still needs to be prepared to collaborate. We're only going to get through this together. I think also we need to be ready to, again, be flexible. You know, that's going to be something that we're going to have to do. We're going to have to understand that the way we all do business has changed. We don't get to travel, you know, as much as we used to. We haven't traveled at all in the last 12 months. Well, I'd say since March of 2020. We've got to find new ways to spread our message without hopping on a plane or in a car to go somewhere. So we've got to find, again, a way to communicate. With the businesses, we've got to find a way to generate, I think, more input from young professionals, to generate more input from young political professionals, and to get to rejuvenate our political boards and commissions and things of that nature. We've got to, you know, we've got to be able to carry on and have a succession plan when we do these things. So, you know, for me, it's really making sure that our office stays nimble, and again does those 5 things, but making sure that the businesses are communicated with and to, and making sure that, you know, they can stay as flexible as possible as well.
Robert, thank you. You said young professionals, and I'm one of them, and I appreciate that. And Jessica and I both are very proud former board members of Thrive, which is a regional young professional program from the Hampton Roads Chamber, but have members all across the water as well. And so thank you for all those efforts to get young professionals in Portsmouth more involved. Appreciate that. I see a great question from Pamela in the chat, and I think it really relates to the innovation district that you mentioned, Robert. She has said, as a branding and marketing agency based in Portsmouth, I received several inquiries from brand owners on how they can network and develop resourceful professional relationships right here in their hometown. Is there a possibility to create something similar to the Downtown Norfolk 100 and the Virginia Beach CBDA?
So yeah, I mean, first let me say thank you for being your continued support and being a business owner in Portsmouth. We certainly appreciate that. You know, one thing I would say, speaking candidly, is that the city is sort of fractured from a standpoint of, we have several groups that do similar things, and we appreciate all that they do. But you know, we have kind of the OTBA, we have the partnership, we have several groups that are, you know, out there that you can network with, and we'd be happy to run down a list of those folks. But I do think there should be a concerted effort to bring a lot of that together, so that we're working together with one voice, because I think certainly we're stronger in numbers. So we do definitely see a possibility in that. Don't get me wrong. You know, there's a restaurant group, for example, and it's tough for them to meet up at certain times because restaurants are open most of the time in the morning all the way through the evening. So there's really no good time to stop. But we've got to find a way to bring these groups together, and I think speak, you know, collectively on how to move Portsmouth forward. But so I do see a significant possibility in making that happen. But there, again, these groups are available. I would tell you to join the chamber. I would tell you to join the partnership, or seek, you know, opportunities like that. Old Town Business Association, or OTBA. And again, we're going to have a number of things here on the horizon from a small business standpoint, or a business standpoint, when it comes to entrepreneurs and workforce development. We're going to make sure that there are opportunities for networking. Again, being on calls like this, you see the folks that are here, you have the opportunity to reach out to these individuals directly. I can't tell you how many LinkedIn requests I have now just from sitting on this call for the last 45 minutes. So those are all opportunities that we see, and like I said, we're gonna make sure we push forward with some of those.
Thank you, Robert. Just one final question before we wrap up, and really for both Robert and Brian to chime in as well, please. How do you feel Portsmouth businesses will have the greatest impact on the region and Commonwealth?
So I'll tackle this first. I'll let Donahue finish it off. To have the greatest impact, again, I think we've got to speak as one voice, okay? And I think that will break those misconceptions. I think that will alleviate some barriers. You know, if we work together and speak collectively. We're stronger in numbers, but I think that from a standpoint of the impact it will have, you're showing support for your fellow business. One thing I would like to see a greater focus for our businesses to have: when a new business comes in, let's support that business. That's how we get done what we get done, because we can call on businesses like you all and say, I need you to share why you're in Portsmouth. I need you to share why you came here. I need you to share the good, but I also need you to share the challenges, so that we know, but we can collectively deal with those. I think to have the greatest impact, I think we've got to all come together and work together, and again, be supportive. We have new businesses popping up everywhere, not just the chains, but the mom and pops. Again, small businesses are the backbone of the economy across this country, but especially in Portsmouth, because of all the businesses you have, I believe it's 86% of all businesses, and we've got over 4,000 businesses in Portsmouth. 86% are small businesses with less than 50 employees. Okay. The majority of that 86%, I think it's like 92, have less than 5 employees. So it's very important for us to support that small business in any way that we can, not just on Small Business Saturday. Small Business Saturday is every Saturday, quite honestly. So we've got to do our part to make sure we're supporting it. And we've got to do it from our standpoint as an economic development organization. We've got to be here to hear you, and we do. We want to hear your concerns. We want to hear the positives, and we want to promote those things. But again, it's going to be us collectively coming together and working together is what I think will make the greatest impact going forward.
Thanks, Robert.
So I will agree with everything Robert just said. But then I want to add, revisiting one item, which Robert had mentioned earlier as well, workforce and the importance of a skilled and diverse workforce. We have that here in Portsmouth. It's something we offer to the region, to the Commonwealth. It's incredibly skilled. You look at some of the industries we support here that are based in Portsmouth, whether it's the defense industry, distribution and logistics, emerging offshore wind industries. We have a skilled and ready workforce, and I think that the one thing we can do to have a greater impact is to invest in that workforce. That's why we're doing it here as a city in Portsmouth to support that workforce. But also our business community needs to do the same thing. They need to invest in their employees and their workforce. So whether that's training, certification programs, educational opportunities, I think that continuing to invest in the folks who drive the economic engine here in Hampton Roads is critical. I think that's the greatest impact that we can have. And it's not just Portsmouth, it's Hampton Roads, it's the state, it's at a national level. So I think that that's the one thing that I would stress is the importance of valuing your workforce and supporting it.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, so I just want to say thank you. I believe Robert has a couple of things that he'd like to share, including our next Let's Talk Business, but typically at this point we would give Alisa a round of applause, so we'll do the golf clap on camera for her and say thank you so much for moderating this wonderful discussion this morning. Thank you for all of your questions that you've sent in either via chat or text or email, because we get them in all manners and fashions. But thank you for being here this morning with us. It's important to us to continue the conversation, and this is one of the ways that we can do it in kind of a broad sense. So thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time. Robert, do you want to talk about next month?
Yeah, so next month, should be even more exciting than this month, because next month we will have I will have a conversation and a sit down with our very own partners at Rush Street Gaming, Mr. Brett Schweiker, who is their government relations individual, as well as Ms. Delcino Miles will be here to have a conversation about the project, because we have some great things happening. So we're excited about sitting down and talking to them and really letting the community know where the project is, how it's moving forward, and be here to answer some of your questions. Along those lines, we've been talking all morning about workforce. That's going to be a key job creator for us coming into the next few years. And we're excited about how our Portsmouth at Work initiative is really going to help them and really push things forward. Again, I would focus again and say you'll hear some more later on this morning about Portsmouth at Work. I would ask you to follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, even Facebook. Follow me personally and staff on LinkedIn and Twitter, because again, we're going to have some announcements later on with our workforce development in Portsmouth at Work, leading up to what I will hint to will be an actual location in a facility to house Portsmouth at Work. We're very excited about where that will go and how that will help us in the future. That's coming later on this year, right around May. One thing I will tell you, when it comes to economic development, one of the great things I like to be able to do is make announcements. This morning, in conjunction with or in association with Rush Street and the casino project, I think we can clearly announce this morning that a GC or general contractor has been selected, both nationally and locally. The national GC will be Yates Construction out of, I believe, Alabama, and our very own SB Ballard will be the local firm handling the construction of the casino. So we are very excited about that. However, there are still opportunities for those SWAM, MWBE, smaller businesses. Fresh off the press this morning from our friends at Rush Street and Ms. Delcino Miles, there is a information session slated for February the 16th at 10 a.m. It's from 10 to 12 to talk about contracting opportunities with those individuals for small businesses. That there is a minority contracting component to the casino project, but also a minority participation from a standpoint of equity ownership. This is an opportunity for the contractors in the area, small women-owned, minority-owned businesses to get their bite at the apple and have their piece of this construction work. So that is, again, fresh off the press. That will happen February 16th, just a little under 2 weeks from now. So I'm sure come March, they'll have more to talk about. But I think it's March 5th, if I'm not mistaken, looking at Jessica, that our next Let's Talk Business will happen. So again, we hope you all will join us. Again, look out for the information that's coming forward about the Portsmouth at Work initiative. And, thank you to everyone for attending this morning.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Love to give everybody a few minutes.
Thank you very much.
Over.
Yeah, no, you're not. Thank you to everyone. We're that's that awkward transition when it's like it's over, but everybody's still here. So no, listen, we appreciate everything you all do as businesses and business owners here in Portsmouth. We appreciate everyone does to help us facilitate growth in the city. And we just ask you to continue to do that, continue to support us, and we will continue to support you all. We want to give you all some time on your Friday, so we ended a little early, so you get 7 minutes back for your day on Friday. But unless we have anything else, I'll just say thank you all, and we'll see you in March.